Hello, my name's Peter and I am autistic. Why is this important? Well, the purpose of this channel is to let you get to know me a little bit better for someone who's an introvert forced into a non-introvert world. This channel aims to be similar to a vlog, sharing my life experiences and some clips of my other channel's content. I hope you can enjoy. So we're first going to cover my worst experience at work. I have spent a number of years in work, and for anyone who's yet to make it into work, if you're still in school, I've got some bad news for you. I can tell you, personality differences do not get any better. In fact, I would argue they get far worse. I've had experiences throughout my life, whether that be first thing in school when I was 5 or 6 years old, starting off at primary school, to my adulthood and in my adult life, where it's just been awful. These experiences of just being screamed at, spoken down to, insulted, you name the number of experiences I have, and some people are just, I would consider very lucky. They don't have anything near the bad experiences I've had. I think part of it is also very much to do with my size. I'm very short, and I have always been either the shortest person in my class or the second shortest. Sometimes I would be taller than maybe one girl in the class. That would equate to about it. But in all other cases, I've always been at least the shortest male. Whilst you are in school, the people you are surrounded with are pretty much of the same age as you. Think of the people in your class. They are a matter of months difference. And even if you compare it to the youngest versus the oldest in the primary or secondary school, the maximum difference between those ages is 7 years. The only experience and exception to this will be your teachers, who will be anywhere from the ages of 22 and older, assuming obviously they have to go through the whole graduation scheme and everything. If they go through traditional university, 22 is the youngest they're going to be out of teaching from graduating. Well, it's not like this in the particular example I'm going to give you. It was actually at a hotel. It's centered near a beach in Bournemouth. I'm not going to name the hotel because it was seasonal, and in all likelihood, the people in question are probably no longer there. Now, the hotel itself runs between April and the beginning of October, whilst closing in the winter months. Sometimes they use this time for renovation purposes. In other times, they can just use it, just keep it vacant. They see the problem they've got is they can't make money effectively within that time. They've got over 100 rooms. How are you going to fill those rooms in winter when not that many people are going to be around? In terms of my job, I was actually in the waiting team for the restaurant, and I would have to sometimes do split shifts between sometimes do the breakfast. So I could be there from 7 to maybe about 11:30, 12 o'clock. That's just including any sort of prep work for the following day. And also sometimes the dinner shifts. Those weren't particularly that, extensive either. They were about 2-3 hours long. So you wouldn't get much in terms of hours or in pay. There was a wide range of cultures between the different staffing, but I can give you a basic breakdown of what those were. There were 5 Polish in total. There were 3 British, 2 Greek, an Italian, and a Bangladeshi, and the manager was Danish. Now, I had various issues with a couple of members of staff who were Polish. I always seem to have problems with these people. I don't like the way they speak. They don't speak to you, they speak at you as though they're instructions. I personally don't find this, amusing or funny or, a good idea, especially considering that they're the foreign population who have the arrogance to come here. Who the hell are you to think you have the right to say anything or to dictate your terms? This is something I get very much on my back on. And yes, I did vote Brexit. I did vote for these people to be out of here. So I will say, in the case of the first member of staff, they could not speak any English at all. Very few words, if anything. That was it. She was very lucky she got hired, and I think she only got hired because the hiring manager happened to be Polish. She was like the area manager, so that's how that came about. She was constantly shouting at me and getting in my way. Luckily, fate had a tendency of making the right people suffer. Apparently, she suffered a fall. This was at home and not at work, so it's not a case of anyone pushed her or anything happened as a result of work. She had an accident, she had a tumble, and she was an older lady. I think she was in her 50s, so falls are going to do you more damage than you are more likely than a younger person. And she developed a sprain, which meant she could no longer work. My thoughts on this were basically, thank goodness for that. I'm not an evil person, but I will not stand for people who get in my way. I've had that far too long, for far too many years, and it's not acceptable. It's one of those key points that will now get me enraged and angry. and will force me to react. And the reason I react as I do immediately to the situation is because it becomes a behavioral trait. If it's a one-off situation, someone's frustrated, they've got their own issues, I can understand, okay, they're having a bad day. If it happens on multiple occasions, this means it's a behavioral trait and it's something that's not going to get better unless you nip it in the bud, and basically you have to shout at them to stop, to put the fear into them. I believe very much in Generation X management. You've got Theory X and you've got Theory Y management. Theory X is basically you can't trust your staff, they need to be watched at all times, and you need to put them in line if they act out of order. I don't like having to do this, but I am too old to be treated like that, and I will use Theory X management if I have to go through that policy. Theory Y is you kind of give some people some more freedom, you give them the ability to explore their options and to do the tasks they feel are comfortable for them, strengthen what they're good at, as well as fill any weaknesses they've got, basically try and make them more of an all-rounder rather than just, I'm really good at this, but I can't do this. It's not good to just be one way, you need to have that mix of skills. The other Polish was what I refer to as a snot-nosed brat. She was just constantly on my back, and I hated the fact that she was doing it. She was only 21 years old as well, so I don't know who's dealing with her, but I hope she's being made to suffer as she is now, because that type of attitude is not going to fly. It's not going to work. No way, no how. It won't work with anyone. Now, I'm very quiet as a person. I'm very much the type of person who just wants to get on with the work, keep their head down, get on, done. I'm not very good at multitasking. If anyone asks me a question and I'm focused on something else, I will not be that person who will be able to respond immediately. It's just not capable, it's not within my functions. I can't do both at once. Either I stop to talk to you or I get on with my jobs. It's one or other. It can't be both. That's how it is. And that's it. I just didn't want to cause any dramas. I didn't want any issues. But I don't want to be treated like a third-class citizen in my own country. It's not going to happen. Every day I was working in that site, and she happened to be on the same shift as I was, she would order me around. This was a daily occurrence. This was multiple times within the day. This wasn't just once. This was forever in that day. And this would involve screaming at me, like having this visceral, screaming, primal, shrieking behavior that I really hated, and it got to the back of my skin. It really made my skin crawl. Fingernails on the chalkboard type of behavior. It was just unacceptable. And she'd scream at me about things like, oh, cut the butter nicely, ordering me to eat food when I didn't want to, which I think is a form of coercive control. I will say as a side note, we were given the chance to eat after breakfast service. If there was anything left, that was given as like a staff meal, or like a, if it wasn't eaten, it'd be thrown in the bin type of thing before we'd go home, after we'd kind of set up. But I suffer from some gastric issues, and this means that if I eat and I eat too quickly and then I move immediately after I eat, I can feel very upset. I can have like gastric stomach acid like at the top of my throat. I can feel sick for between an hour to 2 hours, depending on how bad and how fast I've eaten, how stressed I feel, how acidic the food is, how unhealthy the food is. If it's very fatty or greasy, hash browns for example, I can have a worse reaction to that than if it's going to be, say, like a bowl of fruit. For example, that's fine. Won't have so much issue with that. But saying that, I will have issues with things like orange juice. That's quite strong acid for me. So I basically, then I immediately moved on to just kind of completing my tasks. There were occasions where she actually physically grabbed at me, grabbed at my arm, at my shoulder, and I was just like, get off. I don't know whether this is like a cultural thing. We learnt at school something called Hofstede's cultural dimensions. It's the whole idea that each culture has its own different natures and behaviors. So, for example, there are some cultures that really want to be close. They want very close proximity to yourself and to others. There are other cultures that really want that distance, want that space. I am originally from London, and I was working in Bournemouth because I was also studying at the university there. It was the University of Bournemouth, not the Arts Bournemouth University, so it's that. For someone who has grown up in an environment where you are literally just shoved under people's armpits, sweating. I had days, whereas in the summer holidays, your sweat would get so intense because the heat in that train was so unbearable. Your sweat would intensify to salt. And if it got in your eyes, and it often would, and you would not be able to wipe it away because you were stuck like a sardine can in a can, it would drip into your eye and it would sting. it would hurt. So yeah, I did not appreciate being grabbed at. It was, to me, completely unacceptable. It was like being groped. And if you're a woman out there and this is what's happening to you, I can understand this, but you need to understand it just does not happen purely to women. It happens to men as well. If I did that to a woman, I'd have to say I'd be not only fired, I'd be arrested. Nothing happened to her. But then again, I think that's also to do with the management. They are mostly Polish in the higher end. Some of the multiple, like, higher up managers, finance managers, they're all Polish. So she got away with it as she pleased. Just was not acceptable. She also kept speaking in Polish, which has been encouraged by management, that I also felt was inappropriate. This is England. You speak English in the workplace. She had this type of behaviour where she would shout at people and then she'd do this kind of like schoolgirl giggle type of behaviour, and thought she could manipulate people, like wrap them round her little finger type of thing. Was just not acceptable. I could see straight through this, and I think that's what frustrated her the most, that I could see absolutely through this. And normally there's certain things I do. First thing I do, I'll shut down. I just go into straight away shut down, because by doing that you starve them from any attention. Second phase I go through is I would go through complete shutdown where I don't ever speak to them. I stay well clear of them. Third case, it is getting to the point where I will hit someone. It's not something I do often. I think the first time I've done that was like when I was 10 years old, and it's not something I really would like to get myself to. But there are people who are constantly in my way, and I do feel at one point or another I might be forced into this situation. It was made worse by the fact that she had a good relationship with the supervisor. They were very close, and the supervisor was also Polish, so a lot of the management were, and she was allowed to get away with this even though she could see what the brat was doing. Eventually I just completely lost my temper about 6 months of this, despite my best efforts. This happened 3 days before the end of the season. One of the mantras I kept thinking to myself is just think of the money, think of the money, think of the money. Because we got an end of season bonus if we stayed on for the full 6 months. I was just thinking, it's only a couple of days left, get your money and leave. But no, she was constantly on my back, and I was aware of where we were. This was in front of the dining area, so I kept my voice down. But I stopped after the last time she shouted at me, turned around, and I told her to stop bossing me around. I can guarantee she was very lucky that she spoke to me from a distance, because at that point I think I would have swung and I would have broken her jaw. The final point of revenge I got was actually on the final day I was working. It was working with the Bangladeshi guy who I'm very good friends with, colleagues. I'm Sri Lankan a little bit on my dad's side, about half. So culturally they're not too different. It's a bit like Sri Lankans and Indians, or Sri Lankans and Pakistani, or vice versa here or there. They're all from the same relative geographical area, and there are a lot of mixed cultures that kind of benefit from each other, and they cross over quite frequently. So I would just keep speaking badly of her to her face, and I would mention her name multiple times. She did not speak to me at all, and I walked out on my final day knowing that I had gotten to her. Now, we were also asked whether we wanted to attend like an end of staff party, and that was going to be hosted on that very night as well. But I thought, I've had such a bad experience of this. All I want is to be paid. Just give me my money, and that's all I want. I don't want to be going to these staff parties. I don't want to see her. I don't want to be dealing with her. And for anyone in the comments who does kind of criticize me and says, oh, you've been racist, you've been this, you've been that, I would like to let you know that the way she spoke to me, she spoke to management like that. She spoke to the head chef like that. Someone who was in their 30s. You've got a 21-year-old brat who's screaming at someone in their 30s with 10 plus years chefing experience. I'm glad he did what he did. I didn't see what happened, but I was told by another member of staff that he did not like the way she was speaking to him. He properly shouted at her. She ended up in the staff cloakroom and she burst into tears. I wish I'd been there just to see the look on her face, to see her suffer like she'd made me suffer. For anyone, I hope my experiences have been useful for you, or at least somewhat entertaining. I'd love to hear what your feedback is. Are you autistic? Do you have any tendencies which mean you're a bit different to other people? If so, I'd love to hear those in the comments, and I'd love to hear what your experiences of the workplace are. I'll be making further videos along this type of content alongside some clips of some of my other channels. I've got a Yu-Gi-Oh channel, I've got an anime channel, I've got a cooking cooking channel, I've got a news channel, I've got a food news channel, and I think I've got a total of 7 channels, which I'm trying to upload far more onto. Keep an eye out for those. I will associate those on my channel page as well, so those will be linked together. And I hope you have a nice day. Don't forget to subscribe.